Hello YouTube, hello viewers, and welcome back to another episode of creating our social media API using Laravel. As I say, every single episode we're getting quite far into this, and I hope you guys are really enjoying it. In the previous session we managed to add a status update, and I did set you some homework to see if you managed to get it with inside the user. Hopefully some of you managed it. If you didn't, so I'm going to show you how to do it in the beginning of this session. And then for the second part of the session, I'm going to show you how to create that response helper and do a little bit of cleaning of code that we're going to do. So it just looks a little bit more neat. And remember, I told you I like to keep my controllers nice and small, so this will help keep them a little bit more compressed. So without further ado, let's just jump into our project. And in our project, I don't know if you followed, but I always update the Git repository. If you don't follow it, you can it's in the description below, so you can grab it. I did push an error by accident, so if you have used this recently, I am going to fix it though. But inside the status update controller, I accidentally pushed this here. So if you were trying to do anything and it kept on falling over, that was the reason why. So obviously in the next push for this lesson, that will be gone. All right, so inside our code, what we're going to do is, because we've made that status update, so if I just jump into Heidi quickly, and let's just get that up and running. Let's jump into our local, into our YouTube, just don't want to show you what's going on, and status updates. We have the status update that belongs to our current user that we're using. What we want to do is we want to attach the status to the user. And remember, we made an endpoint a while ago on our API, which was this me, and it was going to our user controller and me. We're going to do the test in here so you can see how it works. You might not want to have it specifically in here. You might want to have an endpoint saying user statuses, for example, or my statuses. You could do it that way too. But for this example, I'm just going to show you inside this controller. So let's open up this controller. And we can see that we have got our function called me. And we're just going to do a few changes to the code. Remember, in Postman, if I just run this, we got back just the generic stuff. Remember, this is soon going to change, so do not worry about that. But we can see we just got the data back about our user. We're going to attach now the status updates that this user has created. And it's dead easy. There's two ways we can do this. The first one I'm going to show you is just getting the posts. So we can show just posts that belongs to that specific user. The other one is going to attach it to this user here. So remember, this is just playground code at the moment, which you're not going to keep this, or you could, I guess, if you want to. It's entirely up to you. But if we want to just get the posts, let's just make, actually we'll call them status updates. We'll do, that's fine. So status updates. And basically, we're going to tag onto our user because we've already got our user here with the auth user. Remember, we can do that because we use the API middleware and we use the token, and the token will give us back the user. With that user, we can then have a look at their status underscore updates. And remember, this refers back to our model. So if you go into that, you can see it refers back to our user model, and it has that has many relationship. And basically off that, we can just say get, and that's going to get every single status update that that user has. Now to see that, we can just plug it into here, for example, inside the data to see that working. So let's run that in Postman. And there we go. We can see that we get our statuses back with the created at and updated and deleted at and our status. Pretty cool, huh? If I decide to add a new status, so let's add a new one inside the body. And I could say I'm going to the zoo tomorrow. Send that in. See that we've got a status update here. Run our get me again. And now we have the other one. And we can see that it's going in oldest to latest. And don't forget, later on in these tutorials, I'm going to show you how to sort that. But that's just pulling back all the posts that that specific user has done because we're tagging onto the user. However, let's say we want to get the user's profile, and inside that profile, we want to show user data on top of all his status updates. Well, again, this is very easy to do. What we can do is we need the ID of the user. So off this auth user, we can quite easily put ID. Now that's going to return me back the user ID, nice and easy. And we're just going to do a simple query in here. So in here, we're just going to do, it's called $user again, not really too bothered. This again, this is just playground code. And we're going to just do a query off our model. So remember, we're going to be using app user, which is our model. And here we're going to do something special. we're going to use this with relation. And we're going to go with our status updates. So basically we're attaching our status updates to the user. And all we're going to do then is we need to find, and basically we're going to find where the user is. Technically this is user ID. Let's name this correctly so you can see it. And just change this to user ID. Okay. Let's plug the user into our data string here and let's hit send. And now we have the data from the user, which is pretty cool. So we get all the data here, and we also get his status updates, which is now part of that array data. And this is a nice way so we can pretty much have all the stuff that we want in regards to the user. Instead of some people, and I don't really agree with this, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but some people would put something in here which would be public function to array, and basically this to array changes what the actual array looks like, and I don't really agree with that. Sometimes it's necessary, but sometimes if you have your correct relations, you don't really need to do that. So technically the best way to do it is just use this with in the query and the status update. Now you probably would have spotted something straight away. Wayne, this does not belong in here because this is a controller. Yes, this will go to our repository or to our service, and then our service will then send it to our repository, and we get our data back that way. That also works too. So that was just an example of what the homework was set for you to see if you could get that in there. We'll make more use of it when we get to that point. But for now, we're just going to go back to its original state without changing anything. So now we should just have our generic user back, like so. However, the session for today is mainly focused on this helper that's going to help us with these responses. And it's just going to make things a lot more neater for us when it comes to the future of creating these responses. So, I mean, this is just one way I like to code. Some people don't like doing this. It's all, again, about preferences. Let me just close all these. We've got so many things open right now. And we can plug it into our app. Yeah, so inside our app. And we're just going to create a new directory. And we're just going to call this helpers. We're going to have a few. Our first one's obviously going to be for our responses. The next one's going to be for guzzle requests. And this is going to be for sending and retrieving data. So you can call HTTP requests and things like that. And basically, we're just going to create a new PHP class. And we're just going to call this response helper. If I could actually spell response helper. Dead easy. Now we obviously have that class. Obviously, its namespace is inside the helpers, and its class name is called response helper. And we're just going to make a function in here. So function. Oops. We're actually going to need to give it a name. And we'll just call the first one success message. Or actually, no, success response is more of a better word. Don't forget, I'm doing all these tutorials on the fly. I don't plan them. I just do them. Right, so inside this success response, we can pass in a few parameters. So if we have a look at our user controller, or any, we can see that we have a success, a message, and some data. So technically, we need 3 fields here: success, message, and data. So in our response helper, we can make some variables. So success. Next one is $message. So these are all the things we'll be passing in. And the last one is going to be data. And that's it. So what we need to do now is we just need to write our normal response message. So return response JSON. So this is why this is very popular, because you only write it once and you don't have to keep doing it over and over again. And we have data. So, oops, helps if I put it in the right place. So data. And then inside the data, we make another array, like so. And in here, we have success, which is now going to plug into our success that we pass in. Just do message will be the next one. So we can copy and paste this message. And the next one is going to be data. Just semicolon there. So now every time we call the success response, all we have to do is pass in success, whether it's true or false, Normally it will be true. In some instances we might have a false and we want to send some data back, but again, that's for later on. A message that we want to pass in, again, this is not mandatory. This is just something I like to pass in just so I know what route I'm working with and etc. and what I'm retrieving back. Well, for debugging, I guess. And this data is whatever data we're going to pass into the response. Nice and easy, right? So let's test this out. So because we've been using the user controller, we might as well do it here. So in this user controller, we can see we've got this massive response inside the controller. We're going to get rid of these lines. But first, we need to add the construct because we need to instantiate that pretty much. And we're just going to plug in request. Request. They call it it's response helper. Sorry, response helper. There we go. And it's the app helper's response helper. So the use case comes into here. Don't forget, my IDE is doing this automatically, so yours might not do that. So just keep that in mind. And then we're just going to call it $response helper. And then this response. Actually, I'm just going to copy it because I keep making spelling mistakes today. Response helper goes to response helper. And then don't forget, we need to make this a protected variable. Now you'll notice this is very familiar to what we do with our repository patterns, exactly the same thing. Okay, and that is not that, it's just equals. So now we can just call this response helper and plug in our success message. So we could go this response helper success response. And all we have to do is say for our first one is true, comma, the message. So we can pass in this message here, like so. And then the last thing we need to do is pass in the user, because that's our data. And now we can actually take that out. And all we have to do now is just return this back. And now we've cut out all that code and it will do exactly the same type of stuff for us. So let's hit send. And there we go. Exactly the same structure, no difference. It's all working how we want it to. However, let's say if we want to have maybe an error response, we do the same thing. We can do public function. And you can pretty much control all your responses in here. You can make loads if you want to for different responses. It's entirely up to you. So response. So an error response. And what shall we have in there? So technically all we need is success, which will probably always be false, but we'll just pass it anyways. And then just a message, I guess, because we want to say what was the issue. So we can just pass that in. Let's see if we can find maybe an error message inside our status update. No, we don't have anything there. User controller. Nope, nothing there. Let's have a look at our auth controller. Got some, here we go. So we've got one here that is an error here. So we can quite easily do this one. Don't forget, we need to put it into our construct. So comma, oops, I just took out all that code. Comma, response helper, $response helper. And we can just duplicate that line and take the same stuff. So response helper, like that. And we just use protected. I just copied that by accident. Baseline. Okay, so now we've got that all there and up and running. We can now, for this response here, for incorrect login, we can use this response helper. And this time we're going to push an error response. And we're just pushing unauthorized here. So we can just say it's false because it wasn't successful. We're going to pass unauthorized here. And actually, we noticed that there's a status code here. We could have really pushed a code in. So let's add that in. So we'll just push 401, but we'll change that inside the response helper. So return. Let's take that out. And we're just going to fix this quickly because we want to have the error code here. Error code there. Error code. And now what we need to do is we just need to write our response. So return response. JSON. Just remember you're only doing this once from now on, so you can make it as clean as you like. Array. And then now we could probably just put error like so. And then in an array, you could have message. And the message is going to be message. And then obviously we need to have success as well. So success, that's going to be that. So basically we're saying we're going to pass error. Instead of data this time, sometimes front-end devs like to have error instead. Instead of data, they like to see error as the first response back. Sometimes it's easy to handle. You could have easily put data, and then you could have done error, and then put some information in there. Actually, so yeah, let's keep that for fluency so we don't get confused. So data, error. Some people are going to shout at me for doing this, to be honest, because it's a bit messy, but we'll just keep it as what the tutorial looks like. So we'll just grab that and put that into that array. So now we got data, the same thing here. This time, unfortunately, we're getting an error, and we can see the success and the message that we get back. Close that off. And the last thing we need to do is just put the error code on the end here, like so. And that's it. That's now our error response set up and our success response also set up. So let's try the login. So if I go on our YouTube and I'll log in, let me try throwing incorrect login. So I won't actually keep this because I need him, but let's just change it to and there we go. So data, we have an error because we are not authorized to use that. It's incorrect. However, there are some things that we could maybe even improve this some more. And again, this could be some homework for you, is that inside this auth controller, remember the request, we could put our own request to check if that email actually exists. And then we can get a nice response back from Laravel. So those are just different ways we can do it. Here we can do the same thing again. So because we've got this, we're just going to do some cleanup of code. So this is a success response. Remember, this is going to be true. The message will be user. And then we can pass in user. Yeah. So basically we're just cleaning the code here and we're just making it a little bit more readable. And we can now get rid of all this. Like that. I just made that message up. You can make whatever messages you want. This one's a little bit more tricky. This is a separate response because we've got some more fields in here. So this might need a separate one that you might need to create for yourself. I'm not going to do it in this tutorial because we need to move on, obviously. But you'd make your own response maybe for this because it's got extra fields. So you might want to do that. Or you could actually just add this all as data and then send that all back if you want. That's fine. So for example, you could have data equals an array like so. Okay, that's $data. What am I doing? $data. And you could put all this inside there. That's not an issue. And what we could do is, because we got all that data, you could say this response helper. Yeah. And then we could say success response true, comma, the message, user logged in, and then we can send data. So we could do that. So if we had to test that, so we need to just reset this back. So we have Bob 9, Bob 8. I can't remember which Bob it was now. It was Bob 8. I'm going to have to check what's going on there. But we can see that it's always just falling over now. So I need to work out why that's happening. Let me take this all out just in case I've broken something. Let's take that all out. I don't think I have broken anything, but just to make sure. There we go. I think I broke something. So you probably just need to make a better response, I guess. I just chucked it in to hopefully guess that would work. Again, remember I'm doing this all on the fly, so I don't plan these sessions. So this one here, this response is exactly the same. You might want to make a separate one for that too. But mainly for generic ones that have 3 fields, success, message, and response. So like the data response, you can just plug that in and it will work fine. And that's pretty much it. I mean, that covers the session for today. The main bit was a little bit of homework to see if you could get the status updates through from the user. Remember, we have those two options in here, which is on the user controller. When we did that section over here, we added two things. One was to do a with, and the other one was just to look at the post, at the status update. So that was also possible to do it that way. And then we made this cool little response helper that we can now add some information into these. Just to give you a heads up, if you're using PHP Storm, just to make code look a little bit more professional, you can actually put /**, and this will just make your code, just add some comment blocks just so you can see what's actually happening on each one of these. Again, these are just comment blocks, they're not necessary. If your IDE doesn't do it, don't worry about it. You'll see my code might be flushed with a lot of them. It's just because it's a habit of mine. I'd go into each one of these and then just add comment blocks like this. It's dead simple on PHP Storm for me. I can just add them in like so, and I can kind of see what's happening on each one of these when I want them to work. So again, I can do the same here, like that, like that. I'll push this all with the changes in the Git repository. But again, it's just /** and just press enter, and you can get all your responses back that you want, like so. Again, I want to thank you very much for taking this episode. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a little bit about how we could use another class that can handle our responses instead of us writing the same code over and over again. I hope you enjoyed this one, and in the next session we're going to look at how do we reset the user's passwords. That's going to be quite a cool little episode. And then the one after that, we're going to look at how we kind of use our status update controller a little bit more efficiently. This will be like editing updates, statuses, and things like that. So remember, if you liked it, make sure you hit the like button. If you really liked it, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you really liked it, make sure you share this with all your friends, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye.